From the Podwires newsroom at podwires.com.
All right, so you want to talk about podcast advertising? Let's dive deep.
Let's do it.
We got all the latest reports, the data, the trends, everything.
Love it.
By the end of this, you'll be surprised at what's happening in the world of podcasts beyond just, well, listening to them.
Right.
Okay, so first up, Money. Libsyn, the big podcasting platform, they just dropped their advertising rates for September 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the average CPM for a 60-second ad, $21.37.
Interesting. That's up a bit from August, but actually down from last September.
Right, it's like a little roller coaster ride in the podcast advertising world.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see where things settle.
Now, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too. CPM, what's that all about?
Yeah, it's one of those industry terms that can sound a little jargony.
Totally. Like, am I supposed to know this?
Basically, CPM stands for cost per mil, which is really just a fancy way of saying cost per thousand.
Okay, so for every 1,000 listeners.
Exactly. It's the cost an advertiser pays to reach 1,000 listeners.
Got it. Makes sense. So $21.37 to potentially reach 1,000 people.
Yep, that's the idea. It's a benchmark for comparing costs across different platforms.
Right. Makes sense. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The categories with the highest CPMs, you ready for this? Government, technology, and health and fitness.
No surprise there. Those sectors are usually big spenders.
Yeah, and we're talking some serious cash. Government advertisers are willing to spend $31 to reach those same 1,000 listeners. Why those categories, though?
Well, it comes down to who they're trying to reach. Those industries are laser focused on a specific demographic, people with higher engagement who are more likely to be decision makers.
Ah, so it's about that targeted approach.
Exactly. And those listeners are perceived as more valuable to those advertisers.
So if you're a podcaster in one of those niches, you're probably more likely to attract those high-paying advertisers.
It's definitely a factor. But it doesn't mean other categories are out of luck.
Right, because we love history, and I'm sure there are tons of history podcasters out there.
Absolutely. Categories like kids and family, sports, even history, they still offer a powerful way to connect with a dedicated audience.
So it's about finding your niche, right?
Exactly. It's about quality over quantity, reaching those truly passionate listeners.
Makes sense. Finding that perfect match between the message and the people who want to hear it.
Exactly. Think about it. Where does your business or interest fit into this landscape? Maybe podcast advertising could be your key to unlocking a whole new audience.
This episode is brought to you by Podwires Marketplace, the best platform for finding top podcast service providers and podcast producers. We've selected the best, and we're ready to make your project ideas a reality, no matter the size. We will achieve your business goals together. Find podcast experts who understand your market and will help you grow your business. Learn more right now on the homepage, https://marketplace.podwires.com.
You know, talking about those niches and categories, it reminds me of some case studies I was looking at earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about finding the right audience and how important that is. These were about a meal kit company and what was the other one? Oh, right, a subscription management app. They were trying to like revamp their advertising game.
Interesting. It's always cool to see how these trends play out in real life scenarios.
Right. So get this. The Harris Poll brand tracker. They're like the gurus of brand performance. They found that both of these companies, they got almost zero results from their TV advertising.
Huh. You'd think with all the emphasis on TV ads, they'd see more of an impact.
Exactly. But here's where it gets wild. Their podcast ads. Boom. Huge success.
Makes sense, right? It goes back to what we were saying about targeted advertising. Podcasts, they're like a direct line to those niche audiences, those people already primed and interested in specific things.
It's like they're choosing to listen, not just being bombarded with ads while they're trying to do a million other things.
Exactly. And when you're already engaged with the content, you're way more likely to actually hear the message and be open to it. It's that whole mental availability thing.
Right, like you're more aware of it because it's relevant to what you're already thinking about. Okay, but here's the real head scratcher, both of these companies. They also saw high brand recognition with AM/FM radio listeners.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, and here's the thing. They weren't even advertising on the radio.
Huh. That's pretty wild. It seems like there's some serious overlap between those audiences then. The podcast listeners, the meal kit and subscription app users, and the radio folks.
Right. Like, they might not be the exact same people, but their demographics and interests must be pretty similar.
Definitely. It just goes to show understanding your target audience is key. You can't just throw ads out there blindly and hope for the best.
You got to be smart about it. So Nielsen Media Impact, they dug deep into these case studies, and they came up with a pretty bold suggestion. They said that if these companies shifted some of their budget from TV to AM/FM radio, they could actually boost their reach by a crazy 16% to 17%.
Wow, that's huge. And it kind of flies in the face of that traditional thinking that TV is king.
Right. It's like maybe there's a better way to do things, a smarter way.
Exactly. Sometimes the less obvious route is the most effective.
It's wild how much things are changing,
Hmm.
right? Like who would have thought we'd be talking about the sound of advertising? But with these immersive audio technologies, it's a whole new ballgame.
It's true. It really is. Dolby Atmos especially. Talk about a game changer. Suddenly, you're not just listening, you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And there's this platform, Podé, that's going all in on Dolby Atmos. They're focusing on Arabic language podcasts.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. They're doing some really innovative stuff.
Yeah, and get this. They just snagged a $5.4 million Series A funding round to go global.
Wow. That's a serious chunk of change. That tells you there's some serious belief in their vision.
Right. Someone heard immersive Arabic language podcast and was like, I'm in. Here's millions of dollars.
It's not just the technology, though, right?
What?
It's the market they're tapping into. The demand for high-quality Arabic language content is huge and growing all the time.
Totally. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, we got to talk about Odyssey. They've had a wild ride recently, emerging from bankruptcy, shaking things up.
Odyssey, yeah, they're a big player. Over 220 radio stations. Definitely a company to watch.
Right. So they managed to shed like 80% of their debt. And they went from public to private.
Big changes. Makes you wonder what their next move will be. It's almost like they hit the reset button.
Total reset. And now they've got these new major stakeholders, Laurel Tree and MBX Commercial Finance, bringing a whole new perspective. Who knows what they'll cook up?
Exactly. Could be acquisitions, doubling down on podcasts, maybe even venturing into some completely new audio formats.
It's a good reminder that this industry is constantly evolving. What's normal today could be old news tomorrow.
That's the exciting part. It's a wide open field with endless possibilities. Anyone listening who's ever thought about making a podcast, exploring the advertising side, or just diving deeper into the world of audio, now's the time.
Couldn't agree more. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. With podcasting changing so fast, what role do you see yourself playing in its future? Will you be a listener, a creator, an innovator, or maybe even all three? The possibilities, much like this amazing audio landscape we're exploring, are pretty much limitless. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those earbuds close at hand.